Hello and a very warm welcome to you. This is the Court House, your #1 legal talk show where we get to learn the law in plain, simple and entertaining language. And we have a lot lined up for you to gain from our wealth of knowledge, because we have a lot of legal experts standing by to give you insights into different areas of the law. And very, very exciting topics are coming your way this season. But first we'll go on a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
If we have to give you anything, then we have to give you everything. Love Plus Channel 465 is simply the best. Because we have something for every member of the family. So dads, keep the team spirit going on with our intriguing sport highlights and reviews. And moms, cooking is never boring when you have our intriguing drama series. And for all your lovely kids, just sit and enjoy. This, and oh this. I told you, we have something for everyone. Because we are indeed all about you. So keep it locked on Love Plus Channel 465 on Star Times.
You're welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Courthouse, and I'm Ito and Olomu-Agbodo. And this week on the show, we are going to be focusing on an aspect of environmental law, essentially waste management. A lot of times we talk about every other thing, but we forget about our environment. Our environment needs to be protected by you and I, and that's why there are laws regulating the protection of our environment, laws regulating waste management. And this week I'm joined by a very, very intelligent legal practitioner. She is Aizighode Obiyan. She's an environmental and waste management advocate, and she's also a legal practitioner. You're welcome to the Courthouse.
Thank you so much. Good day, IT.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us. And a lot of times, as I said, we tend to forget about our environment. We need to hear about global warming and things like that. But generally, what do you think about what we do to our environment in terms of waste management?
Okay, so waste management, I would love to define.
Okay.
So it's a concept that implies the entire cycle of waste, of managing your waste, from collection to transportation, disposal, and then recycling and monitoring of the waste. Now, how we manage that, like you asked, is the crucial part that we're still, would I say, we're still developing locally. We do have very good laws, but of course there's room for reform, but we've started setting up good machinery that if expanded, well-funded, and also made into very solid, sustainable institutions,
okay,
would actually achieve, drive us towards attaining the Sustainable Development Goals, which are like the global standards that we are all working towards as countries in the global space. Now, under the Sustainable Development Goals, we have very many. The 17 goals are actually interconnected.
Yes.
But you can look at that of clean water and sanitation, also climate action, and then responsible consumption and production, which are goals that drive towards enabling people, even ordinary citizens like you and I, to think pre-cycling, think recycling, think reuse, in our day-to-day activities.
You just talked about sustainable development goals, and you mentioned the aspect on clean water and sanitation. Can you give us some more insights into that aspect?
For the clean water and sanitation, the drive is to push for access, especially to people who are vulnerable. So it could be based on your climate, so climes that are drought-prone, climes that are maybe within the desert encroachment suffering areas. You also have situations of poverty. Okay. So poverty also, people could live within other kind of zones, temperate or tropical, or, but then because of their vulnerabilities, their poverty, then you have them not accessing water. And of course, that impacts sanitation. It impacts hygiene, impacts health, and could also cause a nuisance to general societal well-being. So clean water and sanitation as a goal actually fosters sustainable environmental management and also helps the waste management sector, in its own life cycle, like we've mentioned earlier.
Okay. Now, you talked about our sustainable development goals, and generally these goals are from the United Nations. Yes. Is Nigeria a signatory to all these policies, all these action plans, all the sustainable goals? And if yes, how well have we been able to implement any of these goals to ensure that they are actually practicable at the lower scale, at the lower level?
It is in our best interest as a country to drive towards localizing, doing all we can to ensure that we localize all the relevant treaties, all the relevant protocols, covenants that exist for us to begin to, adhere to what is best practice as the United Nations foresees for us, for our period.
Okay, quite interesting. Then now, away from the United Nations and treaties and all that, generally looking at, let's come to Nigeria now. Do we have localized laws that regulate waste management? Because in cities, urban centers, maybe like Lagos and the rest of them, we see the government trying to promote waste management, proper waste disposal, and a lot of times we end up seeing trash on the ground, we end up seeing landfills and things like that. So do we have any laws regulating this?
Yes, we do locally. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the Constitution, which in Section 20, for example, obligates the government to protect air, land, water, forest, and all our environmental resources for the well-being of the people.
Yeah.
We also have that which is arguably justiciable in Chapter 4, which is the right to life, right to dignity. You cannot have life that is sustainable in an unhealthy environment. So, in a sense, it means that the government must work actively to ensure that the persons within its jurisdiction are able to live in a sustainable environment, right? But then we also have the National Environmental Standards and Regulatory Enforcement Agency, which is NESRIA. This was set up in 2007, and NESRIA is the I would say that's the lion in the jungle.
Okay.
So NESRIA is empowered to create policies, drive regulations, implement, enforce all our environmental laws per se in the country. And, well, to an extent, NESRIA has actually enacted a lot of regulations. So you have so many regulations for the different industries in Nigeria, from textiles to metal to plastics. To wood, pulp, to a variety of sectors. You have so many regulations that are quite innovative, and it's in good form for us to have those. However, the gap remains the connection with citizenry. And also interconnection with all the different levels of government.
Of government and the various states as well.
And the various states, exactly. So you have a situation where that's where the scenario you painted in Lagos State, where you have plastics in our canals, in our drainages. And that's very unsustainable, but that's from my perspective, is because the implementation, even though you have a good framework, the implementation hasn't been made into something that's like an institution that runs, effectively. Like, when they say oil the wheels of your vehicle, it runs smoothly, yes, efficiently, to ensure that everyone at every stage is doing their job and ensuring that those drainages don't even get to it. It's not even about clearing the drainages, but it's about even preventing.
Okay, quite interesting.
Yes.
I would like to hold our thoughts. We want to take a brief listen to our reports, and we have some legal nuggets. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Waste management laws govern the transportation, treatment, storage, and dispersal of all manner of waste. Waste laws are generally designed to minimize or eliminate the uncontrolled dispersal of waste materials into the environment. Determination of whether a material constitutes a particular waste type may govern the manner in which a material must be handled from that point forward. For example, in the United States, non-hazardous municipal solid waste may be sent to a landfill, while used motor oil is deemed hazardous and cannot be dumped in landfills, but rather is subject to more stringent handling, storage, treatment, and disposal requirements. Many other wastes may have their own individual definitions and unique handling requirements. In each case, a waste stream may be identified. Waste is generated when a previously useful item is discarded or abandoned, and then may flow through various defined treatment, recycling, and storage areas before arriving at a final designated disposal site. Disposal standards govern the permissibility method and location of disposal of a particular waste. Such standards may be designed to protect human health and comfort and environmental values. In Nigeria, managing waste disposal has become a major concern despite several attempts by successive governments and private organizations in that direction. You're welcome back if you just joined us. This is the Courthouse, and this week we've been talking about waste management, and we have a legal expert in the field, Aizighode Obiyan, and she's been talking very, very interestingly about the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the NESRA laws and the regulations and things like that. In Nigeria, there are laws actually regulating waste management and waste disposal. But now, let me ask you about the fact that recently the Senate was talking about banning plastic. I think that was the 8th Senate before that in Nigeria, before they handed over to the 9th Senate.
Yes,
They're talking about banning plastics, and generally we still see the states, in terms of refuse disposal, waste disposal, they have landfills. And you talked about the right to life, the right to dignity, yes, which should be in an environment that is sustainable, an environment that is free from waste and things like that. But we have landfills very close to where people live. So now, look at it comparatively in terms of other jurisdictions. How do they manage their waste? Do we see landfills so close to residential areas? Do we have them also banning the plastic? And if they also banned the use of plastics, what other alternatives did they give, and how effective is their recycling? So that's like 2 or 3 questions in one.
Yes,
so
but I mean, I understand, and it goes to show that you have a zest for this sector. Yes. I mean, and it also shows that it's these are concerning challenges. I think that's why you're a bit, I mean, but it's good. I'm glad you're speaking this way, because this is advocacy that we all need to be a part of. And it is true, like I said earlier, we do have laws. The laws might not be as progressive as we wish that they may be, but we have a platform for now that we can operate. And that if we were even operating it, some of the challenges that we witness presently would be non-existent, or at least would be reduced, you know, I think at least by 50%, you know. This is just my estimate. because I think that we have good mechanisms in place that we can drive and continue to reform. Now, as to the other part of it, which is where you mentioned the particular plastics. There's actually present a lot of elaboration on the impact of plastic on the environment presently. But I mean, it's not only plastic that is impacting the environment negatively, but I think it is because each individuals come in contact with plastic a lot more on a daily basis, so we talk about it a lot more. But yes, there was a plastic prohibition bill that was proposed in the last 8th assembly, like you mentioned. And since then, I haven't actually heard a bit more. It was a very short bill, and its intent was to ban plastic bags, plastic in Nigeria, so that, in essence, and it intended that NESRIA would be the driving agency to enforce. Now, I fault that bill because I think that one more legislation without an analysis of why your industry is not performing, as it is a problem. So, or rather, it's not the solution to the challenge.
Okay.
So, the bill on its own is not, it's a good start, but you cannot ban without several premeditated steps taken or put in place. So, for example, you can't ban, it's a value chain. The plastic industry, we are an oil-producing country, and it's one of the byproducts of our main natural resource that, drives our economy. And so you can't outrightly just cut that off just by a law. It's going to be something, it is something that even the government and the private sector, people invested in manufacturing and in production or import of these products, and the end users, retailers, and people who rely on plastics to package their goods, their cake, their, all whatnot everywhere, and people who buy products like that also have to be sensitized, have to be included in the decision-making process, and then have to be aided. So it was good you mentioned the fact that you have other climes, and then you're wondering how they've been coping. I'll give you an example of Gemini.
Okay.
Gemini has good funding for recycling and also has financial incentives to people. So, for example, you take your plastic bottle, you want to dispose it rather than just sorting, which is where Nigeria is even trying to grapple with establishing sorting plants all over the country. In Germany, they've gone steps ahead where they incentivize people to return their plastics and get money or get a discount on the next buy.
Quite interesting.
Very interesting.
Quite interesting. So that's still a long way, because instead of maybe creating incentives, the National Assembly actually went ahead to stipulate fines for violation of any of those supposed
but
laws.
it's not sustainable. In my mind, we are still grappling with the authoritarian past, and it's influencing some of our democratic legislation. So we have to realize that you reorient people, even awareness. How do you pass a plastic ban? Who's going to interpret that to the mama on the street?
And to those using sachet water and things
producing
like that.
Pure water. Pure water became a business because we don't have pipe-borne water. We don't have reliable government-provided water, or even if it's other companies. How are you thinking of getting Eva, for example? Eva, if you don't mind my using names.
No.
Okay, so Eva is a manufacturer of bottled water, for example. How are you thinking of getting them to maybe own 2 cities in Lagos State, for example, and ensure that rather than their plastic bottles, they connect those people to a particular water grid, and then they, just like the private sector in the power sector. So you have people owning cities, IKEDC, Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company. It could be Eva Water Distribution Company for Yaba and mainland. And then rather than selling bottles, that's the way you incentivize them to move away from the plastic bottles to such. And they could be aided by lesser, because, I mean, it's a stretch, but you then need a time frame. So you have to really engage your system and be very practical. So that's why I said when we're driving towards the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to realize that we have to take steps. And steps, like when you're climbing a stairway, you can't get to the top without going through the first and the ones that
precede.
Exactly.
Quite interesting. I'm actually quite impressed with the proposals you've actually made, because I was going to ask you for reforms, but you've actually mentioned a few, like owning cities,
Oh, yes.
comparing the water sector to prevent this, to reduce the use of plastics, just like
Yes.
the electricity companies were created. We could have
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
That's actually very interesting, and I hope the government would probably hear this and implement. You could even be an ambassador in terms of waste management. Thank
Well,
you
that's why I'm
so
here
much.
today. Thank you.
Do you
It's
have
been
any
a
other
pleasure.
thing to say in terms of waste management, disposal,
Well,
things like that?
I know that today's program, you've driven it to the angle of what laws exist and then what policy reforms are necessary. But I would also just love to chip in a bit on what is individual responsibility.
Okay.
So again, like we said, you have incentivizing, right, in other climes, but people also need to drive the campaign. You cannot be alone organizing such programs as this. I can't be alone taking interest in this sector.
Yeah.
The ordinary citizen has to begin to think about the impact of the things that they use,
On
the
the
things that they
environment.
interact with within the environment, and then how they manage it. So people owe, it is the law that if you don't have access to waste disposal, you can actually reach out to your local government council, write a letter, or visit them, and then ask them for the kind of resources that you need. It is also possible for you to be the one who drives the change and campaigns for example, truck pushers to be a part of our waste disposal collection, our waste collection cycle chain. So people need to come out of their shells and begin to take ownership of the country. I think when we leave it all to government to innovate laws, innovate policies and programs that for waste management, we are not doing our bit as citizens. So that's my strong urge, even on this platform.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
When you talked about taking ownership, it reminded me of another program that we have, and it's about you and the government, u.gov. So I think we'd like to have you there so that you can talk more on citizens' responsibility in terms of the environment and ensuring that we leave our environment better than we met it. And it's another way of saying, don't just wait for what the government can do for you, but think also what you can do for the government, what you can do for your society. It's been quite interesting chatting with you. But I told you earlier, because I didn't want to set you up, I didn't want to lay ambush. We have the bar book segments, and they will share Latin maxims and their meanings.
Yes.
So like I told you too, I think my favorite is Res ipsa loquitur, because the facts, they speak for themselves. For what is your favorite, or what is your Latin maxim for the week?
IT. Okay, well, my favorite, one I really like is Nemo dat quod non habet.
Okay.
And the reason is because it says that there must be a foundation for you to be able to build, that which is sustainable. So you cannot, in essence, you cannot give what you don't have. Yes, you can't build on nothing. So I like that because I think it speaks to the root of human existence.
Yes.
We always have to be very sure of what our education, the kind of systems, processes, even our minds, be careful of what you let in and all of that. So I think it's very,
So
very
now you're going again to
all-encompassing.
another aspect, power of your
Yes,
mind, as
yes.
written by a man of God.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being on the show. Well, you
Thank
get
you
to
for
find out
having me.
more Latin maxims and their meanings on our bar book segment. Stay with us. hear from you, as I said earlier, so you can log on to our website on www.loverplus.tv, and you can send messages to the numbers I'll be showing on your screen now, or to our email info@loverplus.org. Bye for now. And I say, don't just get mad, go get a lawyer. See you next week.